I'm the Business Squad's legal eagle, Ben Van Gelderen of Benjamin F. Van Gelderen PLC, and we're a little informal again for my case of the week. As you can see, I'm at home, and I've got my legal assistants hanging out with me on the couch. Funny story about that is that my wife and I have awful luck with cars. So real quick, we lived in Chicago for a while, shared one car, Mini Cooper, because you only need one car in Chicago. We moved to Brighton. Obviously, you need two cars. Took us a long time to get there. Finally got a second car back in March, and the next week I got in the first accident ever, and I'm still fighting with the insurance company on the repairs for the Mini. And then we were back down to one car again, and then we got a second car 2 weeks ago, and the very next day, the car that we had a transmission problem, broke down right on the middle of Grand River Avenue. And then less than a week later, that second car that we got, which is now the third car in 3 months, is now in the shop. And I think it's just a minor brake fluid issue. But I thought I would tell that story for about a minute because it's far more entertaining than any case law that I have to talk about. Anyways, this week, the case of the week is Pace versus Edel-Harrelson something. I apologize. The link will be in the description. And it has to do with employment law, which ties into our nonprofit theme this month for the Business Squad, because a nonprofit has to worry about employment law just as much as anybody else does. And this specific case talks about somebody doing something with grant money, which obviously nonprofits have to do with. So in this case, Pace, who's the plaintiff, was fired because basically there was a lot of issues where she thought her supervisor was misappropriating grant funds to buy a stove for her daughter. She went to her supervisors about it. Her supervisors, it's not entirely clear what they did. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of disagreements between Pace and the other employers, and it's complicated. So if you're interested in the facts, I would encourage you to go check it out down there. But needless to say, the reason that she was fired is because she basically accused this woman of trying to misappropriate grant funds and did it in an inappropriate way. So Ms. Pace comes back and says, well, wait a second, you can't do this because it's a violation of the Michigan Whistleblowers Protection Act. And that's the real question here, is whether or not the Michigan Whistleblowers Protection Act, and if you're not in Michigan, pretty much every state has a very similar Whistleblowers Protection Act, and there's also a federal one too. But the question is, it applies to reporting crimes, ongoing or past crimes. Does it apply to reporting a future crime? Well, the Michigan Supreme Court unanimously looked at it, and they looked at the language of the statute, and they said, you know what? It does not include future crimes. If they wanted it to include future crimes, they would have said as much. And so because what she reported was in the future and not in the past, the Whistleblowers Protection Act does not apply. So, long story short, right, if you've got an employment issue and you are looking at firing somebody and you want to know if the Whistleblowers Protection Act applies, according to this Supreme Court decision, which is from 2015, from earlier, or 2016, from earlier this year, it applies to reporting an ongoing crime or a crime that happened. It doesn't apply to a crime in the future, which is a little weird. And I should caveat that by saying that the court actually remanded the case to say, okay, the Whistleblower Protection Act doesn't apply, but go back and look and try and decide if discharging her for this reason is against public policy. And that's a very kind of broad, it's kind of a BS argument to say something is, she was wrongfully terminated because it was against public policy. But I could see the court maybe doing it in this case because, like I said, she was basically saying, this woman is going to be misappropriating grant funds to buy a stove for her daughter. And if that was really the reason that she got fired, I could see the courts in an extreme situation like this maybe saying that way. What do you think, Atlas? Oh, sorry, he's distracted. He hasn't really been listening. He's got to make sure that the cats aren't coming around and being in the background. That's been his job in this video. So, looks like I kept it under 5 minutes again. Of course, I didn't give as much detail as I wanted, but I'm sure I gave you more detail than you want, so I'm going to cut off to keep it under 5 minutes. I will see you next week. Thanks, bye.